"Take my daughter." Clara's voice shattered. "Take her and ride. Don't look back." The 5-year-old clung to her mother's neck, sobbing without sound. 3 riders crested the hill behind them. Dust, heat, the hammer of hooves drawing closer. Clara had been running for 11 days. 11 days since her brother-in-law had burned the deed and called her a liar. 11 days since she'd grabbed Lily and fled into the Texas summer with nothing but a carpetbag and a dead man's name. Now collapsed beside a stranger's wagon, she had nothing left to offer but the truth. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to our channel and follow Clara's journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel across this beautiful country. The wagon wheel sank deep into the mud. Clara felt it before she saw it, that sickening lurch, the wooden groan, the sudden stop that threw her forward against the seat. Lily tumbled into her lap with a startled cry. "Mama!" "I know, baby, I know." Clara steadied her daughter with shaking hands. "Stay still." She climbed down Boots, squelching into the muck left behind by last night's storm. The July sun had already begun baking the Texas earth into cracked clay, but here in this shallow creek bed, she'd foolishly tried to cross the ground remained treacherous. The back wheel had buried itself past the hub. Clara grabbed the spoke and pulled. Nothing. She braced her feet and threw her weight against it. The wheel didn't budge. "Come on." She yanked harder. "Come on!" Her palms burned. Her shoulders screamed. Sweat dripped into her eyes, mixing with the tears she refused to acknowledge. Lily watched from the wagon seat, clutching her rag doll to her chest. She hadn't spoken more than 10 words since they'd left. She just watched, always watched with those wide blue eyes that had seen too much for 5 years old. Clara's grip slipped. She fell backward into the mud, her dress soaking through instantly. For a long moment she didn't move. The sky above was impossibly blue, cloudless and different. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk circled. The creek bed smelled of wet earth and rotting leaves, and something that might have been hope dying. 11 days. She'd been running for 11 days, and this was where it ended. Not with Virgil's hands around her throat, not with a forged signature on a deed, but here stuck in the mud like a fool who'd thought she could outrun a man with money and lawyers and no conscience. "Mama!" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Clara pushed herself up. Her elbows shook. Her whole body shook. But she stood because that's what mothers did. "It's all right, sweetheart." She wiped mud from her cheek, probably just spreading it further. "Mama's going to figure this out." She didn't know how. She circled the wagon, searching for something, a branch, a board, anything she could wedge beneath the wheel. The horse stamped nervously, sensing her panic. "Easy, boy. Easy." But the horse wasn't looking at her. Its ears had pricked forward, nostrils flaring at something beyond the rise. Clara froze. She heard it, then hoofbeats. Distant but approaching. Not the thundering gallop of pursuit, but the steady rhythm of a rider in no particular hurry. Her hand went to the small pistol tucked in her carpetbag. She'd taken it from William's study the night she fled. She'd never fired a gun in her life. The rider crested the hill. He was tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered, wearing a hat that threw shadows across his face. A long duster coat despite the heat. Behind him, he led a pack mule loaded with supplies. Clara's fingers closed around the pistol grip. The rider stopped at the top of the rise. For a long moment, he just looked down at her, the mud-covered woman, the stuck wagon, the silent child clutching a doll. Then he clicked his tongue and started down the slope. "Stay back!" Clara raised the pistol. Her hands trembled so badly the barrel wavered in circles. "I'll shoot. I swear I will." The rider reined in his horse. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just tilted his head slightly, studying her, the way a man might study a wounded animal, deciding whether to bite or bolt. "Ma'am." His voice was low, rough with disuse. "That pistol ain't cocked." Clara's face flushed. She fumbled with the hammer, nearly dropping the gun entirely. "I mean it." Her voice cracked. "I'll do it." "I believe you would." He said it simply, without mockery. "But I ain't here to hurt you. I'm just passing through." He nodded toward the wagon. "Looks like you're stuck." "I can manage." "Can you?" The question held no cruelty, just a plain observation from a man who could see the truth plain as day. Clara's arm lowered an inch. Then another. The pistol suddenly felt impossibly heavy. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Name's Caleb Stone. Got a spread about 4 miles west." He shifted in his saddle. "That your girl up there?" Clara stepped sideways, putting herself between him and the wagon. "She's none of your concern." "Wasn't saying she was." Caleb swung down from his horse in one fluid motion. He stood well over 6 feet, and up close Clara could see the scar that ran along his left forearm, a pale ridge of healed flesh, old and faded. "I'm saying that wheel's dug in deep. You ain't moving it alone." "I didn't ask for your help." "No, ma'am, you didn't." He walked past her toward the creek boots splashing through shallow water. He crouched beside the buried wheel, ran his hand along the axle, checked the spoke joints. "Rim's cracked," he said. "You force it now, whole thing's liable to split." Clara's stomach dropped. "What?" "Gonna need to dig it out slow. Jack it up proper." He stood brushing mud from his knees. "Got tools on my mule. Take about an hour." "I don't have an hour." Caleb looked at her, then really looked. His eyes were brown dark as coffee grounds, and something flickered in them. Recognition, maybe. Or memory. "Someone chasing you." Clara's jaw tightened. "That's none of your... Mama!" Lily's voice cut through. Clara turned. Her daughter had climbed down from the wagon seat and was standing in the mud ragdoll dangling from one hand. "Lily, get back in the wagon!" But Lily wasn't listening. She was staring at Caleb with those 2 old eyes. "Are you a bad man?" she asked. The question hung in the summer air. Caleb crouched down slowly, bringing himself to her height. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with early gray. "I've done bad things," he said quietly. "Reckon most folks have. But I ain't here to hurt you or your mama." Lily considered this. Her grip on the ragdoll tightened. "Mama says men lie." "Your mama's right." Caleb stood, settling his hat back on his head. "Guess you'll just have to watch and see." He walked back to his mule without waiting for Clara's permission. He unpacked a spade, a length of rope, and a worn leather toolkit. His movements were efficient, practiced the kind that came from years of solving problems alone. Clara watched him work. The pistol hung forgotten in her hand. "You can put that away," Caleb said without turning around. "Ain't gonna be much use with a cracked wheel anyway." Her face burned. She tucked the gun back into her carpet bag. "Why are you helping us?" "Would you rather I didn't?" "I'd rather know why." Caleb paused, spade in hand. He looked out toward the horizon where heat shimmered off the distant hills. "5 years ago," he said slowly, "I saw a woman and her boy stranded on the road outside Austin. Wagon broke down just like yours. I was in a hurry, had somewhere to be." He drove the spade into the mud. "I rode past." Clara waited. "Found out later some men came along after me, robbed her, killed the boy when he tried to fight back." He dug in silence for a moment. "She survived, barely. Last I heard, she was living in a charity house in San Antonio talking to walls." The creek water gurgled softly over stones. "So when I see a woman stuck in the mud with a little girl," Caleb continued, "I stop. Every time. Won't fix what I did. Won't bring that boy back. But it's something." He returned to his digging without another word. Clara felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the wall she'd built around herself these past 11 days. "Clara," she said quietly, "my name's Clara Whitmore. That's my daughter Lily." Caleb nodded once, but didn't look up. "Pleasure, ma'am." The hour stretched into 2. The sun climbed higher, baking the mud into something more manageable. Caleb worked steadily, pausing only to offer water from his canteen. Clara tried to help at first, but he waved her off. "You're dead on your feet," he said. "Sit with your girl. I'll manage." She didn't have the strength to argue. She sat beside Lily on a flat rock, watching the stranger dig out their wheel. Lily had stopped staring and had begun arranging pebbles in patterns on the ground. "Mama," Lily whispered, "is he going to make us go back?" Clara's heart clenched. "No, baby. Nobody's making us go back. Uncle Virgil said he'd find us anywhere." Lily's voice was flat, reciting a threat she'd heard too many times. "He said the law was on his side." Clara pulled her daughter close. "Uncle Virgil lies. The law isn't on his side. He just has enough money to make people think it is." "Then how come we're running?" The question cut deep because Clara didn't have a good answer. She'd asked herself the same thing every night, lying awake in haylofts and abandoned barns listening for hoofbeats. "Because sometimes," she said carefully, "you have to run before you can stand and fight." We needed to get away from his reach, find somewhere he can't touch us. Is there such a place? Clara looked at the endless Texas sky, the hills rolling toward horizons she'd never seen. "I hope so." Caleb grunted as he finally levered the wheel free. The wagon lurched forward, and the horse nickered in relief. "There." He stepped back, wiping his brow. "Should hold for now, but that rim needs replacing soon. Got a wheelwright in Cedar Mill about 20 miles north." 20 miles? Clara calculated quickly. She had maybe 2 days of provisions left. No money beyond the few coins sewn into her petticoat hem. "Is there somewhere closer?" Caleb studied her face. She knew what he saw, the dark circles under her eyes, the hollows in her cheeks, the way her dress hung loose from meals skipped so Lily could eat. "My place is closer," he said finally. 4 miles west, like I said. Got a spare room. You and the girl could rest there tonight. Figure out your next move come morning." Clara's instincts screamed caution. A stranger. An isolated ranch. A man she'd known less than 2 hours. But her instincts had also told her to trust Virgil when William died. Her instincts had said family wouldn't betray family. She looked at Lily, who was now watching Caleb with something other than fear. Curiosity, maybe. "Just for the night," Clara said. "We'll be gone by dawn." Caleb nodded. "Fair enough." He helped her back into the wagon seat, his hand steady at her elbow, careful not to presume too much. Then he mounted his horse and took the lead, the pack mule falling into line behind him. They traveled in silence through the afternoon heat. The landscape shifted from creek bed to rolling prairie, dotted with oak and mesquite. Grasshoppers leapt from the tall grass as they passed. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead. Lily fell asleep against Clara's shoulder, the rag doll clutched to her chest. Clara watched Caleb's back as he rode. He sat easy in the saddle, comfortable with the silence, scanning the horizon out of habit rather than worry. What kind of man admits his worst shame to a stranger, she wondered. What kind of man offers help, expecting nothing in return? The answer came unbidden, a dangerous kind. Because men like that, truly good men, were rare enough to be almost mythical. And Clara had learned the hard way that myths usually had teeth. The ranch appeared as the sun began its descent toward the western hills. It wasn't much a weathered wooden house, a barn with a patched roof, a corral where a few horses milled about. But smoke rose from the chimney, and the fences stood straight, and someone had planted flowers by the front porch. Actual flowers, red and yellow, defying the summer heat. "You live here alone?" Clara asked. "Not exactly." Before she could ask what that meant, the front door banged open and a boy came racing down the steps. "Caleb, Caleb, you're back!" He was maybe 8 years old, all gangly limbs and wild brown hair. "I finished the whole fence line like you said, didn't miss a single post. And Mrs. McGraw came by with biscuits and she said—" He stopped short when he saw the wagon. His eyes went to Clara, then to the small figure still sleeping against her shoulder. "Who's that?" Travelers, Caleb said, swinging down from his horse. They're staying the night. Jesse, this is Mrs. Whitmore and her daughter Lily. Jesse's face scrunched. Whitmore, like the town. Different Whitmore. Oh. Jesse edged closer to the wagon, trying to get a better look at Lily. How old is she? 5, Clara said. That's little. Jesse sounded faintly disappointed. Can she talk? When she wants to. I talk all the time. Caleb says I could talk the ears off a mule. Jesse grinned, revealing a gap where 2 baby teeth had recently fallen out. You want me to show you the chickens? We got 11. Well, 10 now. A coyote got Mrs. Feathersworth. Clara couldn't help it. She smiled. It felt strange on her face, the first real smile in weeks. Maybe tomorrow, she said. We've had a long day. Caleb was already unloading her carpetbag from the wagon. Jesse, go heat up some of that stew from last night and put fresh water in the guest room. We got a guest room. We do now. Jesse ran back inside, his bare feet slapping against the porch boards. Clara climbed down carefully, trying not to wake Lily. The little girl stirred anyway, blinking in the fading light. Where are we? Somewhere safe, Clara said. Just for tonight. Lily looked around at the ranch, the worn house, the patient horses, the boy who'd already reappeared in the doorway with a water pitcher. The flowers are pretty, she whispered. It was the most she'd said in days. Caleb overheard. He paused on the steps, something softening in his weathered face. My mother planted those, he said quietly. 15 years ago. They come back every summer, no matter how hot it gets. Lily considered this. Even when nobody waters them. Even then, some things just keep growing when you give them half a chance. He went inside, leaving Clara standing in the yard with her daughter, watching the last light of day paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. That night, Clara lay in an actual bed for the first time since she'd fled. The mattress was thin, and the sheets were rough, but they were clean. A quilt lay folded at the foot of the bed, hand-stitched, faded, but carefully maintained. Something a mother might have made. Lily slept beside her, curled into a tight ball, the way she always did now, as if bracing for impact, even in dreams. Through the wall, Clara could hear the low murmur of Caleb's voice as he put Jesse to bed. She couldn't make out the words, but the rhythm was steady, patient, a bedtime ritual worn smooth by repetition. She thought about the story Caleb had told her, the woman and boy he'd ridden past, the guilt he still carried 5 years later. She thought about William dead in a pool of his own blood on the bank floor, reaching for her even as the life left his eyes. She thought about Virgil standing at the funeral, his hand on her shoulder, promising to help with the estate. And she thought about the night 3 weeks later, when she'd found him in William's study, forging her signature on documents that would transfer everything, the ranch, the cattle, the land that had been in William's family for 3 generations to his name. I was just simplifying things, he'd said, not even bothering to hide the papers. A widow shouldn't have to worry about business matters. I'm taking care of you, Clara, the way William would have wanted. William wanted me to have the ranch. It's in his will. Wills can be contested. Virgil had smiled that smooth, reasonable smile that had fooled her for so long. Especially when the widow is unstable, grief-stricken, making poor decisions. I'm not unstable. Aren't you? He'd stepped closer. Running away in the middle of the night with a child, taking money that isn't yours, threatening violence against a family member trying to help. He'd tutted softly. Doesn't look good, Clara. Doesn't look good at all. That was when she understood. He'd planned everything. The lawyers, the forged documents, the witnesses who would swear she'd been acting erratically since William's death. He'd probably been planning it before William was even cold in the ground. Maybe before William was dead at all. The thought had crystallized in that moment, ice in her veins. Had the bank robbery been random? Or had Virgil known those men? Had he told them when William would be making the deposit, where the guards would be positioned, how to get in and out clean? She couldn't prove it. She might never prove it. But she'd seen the truth in his eyes when she'd accused him. For just a second, his mask had slipped. And what she'd seen beneath was something that had no business walking around in human skin. "I'll die before I sign anything," she'd told him. That, Virgil had replied, can be arranged. She'd taken Lily and run that night. 11 days later, here she was. In a stranger's house, in a room that smelled of cedar and dust, with nothing but her daughter, and a handful of coins, and a dead husband's gun she didn't know how to use. Sleep came eventually, but it brought no peace. She dreamed of Virgil's face, smiling, always smiling, as he struck a match and held it to the deed. She dreamed of William reaching for her with blood-soaked hands. She dreamed of Lily calling for her from somewhere far away, somewhere she couldn't reach. And through it all, the sound of hoofbeats, drawing closer, closer, closer. She woke to the smell of bacon. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling was wrong. The light was wrong. Everything was wrong. Then Lily stirred beside her, and the night came rushing back. The ranch. Caleb Stone. Just for the night. Clara sat up slowly. Her whole body ached, muscles protesting movements they'd been making for days without rest. But the smell of food pulled her forward. She found Lily already awake, sitting up in bed and staring at the door. "Someone's cooking," Lily said. "I know." "Are we allowed to eat it?" The question broke Clara's heart. 11 days of careful rationing, of telling Lily she wasn't hungry so the child could have the last of the bread. 11 days of her daughter learning that food wasn't a given. "Yes, baby." Clara smoothed Lily's tangled hair. "We're allowed to eat it." They dressed quickly in the same clothes from yesterday. Clara had nothing else, and made their way to the kitchen. Jesse was already at the table, shoveling eggs into his mouth with alarming speed. Caleb stood at the stove, his back to them, handling a cast-iron skillet with the same quiet competence he'd shown digging out the wagon wheel. "Morning," he said without turning around. "Coffee's on the table. Eggs will be up in a minute." Clara hesitated in the doorway. "We should be going. We've imposed enough." "Ain't an imposition if I offered." Caleb slid eggs onto a plate and set it on the table. "Sit. Eat. You can figure the rest after." Jesse grinned at them through a mouthful of food. "Caleb makes the best eggs. He puts cheese in 'em." Lily edged toward the table, eyeing the plate with naked longing. Clara gave up. "Just breakfast. Then we go." They ate in relative silence, broken only by Jesse's cheerful chatter about the chickens the fence he'd repaired and the snake he'd found in the barn last week. "It was this big." He spread his arms wide. "Caleb said it was just a rat snake, but I think it was a rattler. I wanted to keep it, but—" "Finish your breakfast," Caleb said. "Yes, sir." Clara noticed how Jesse looked at Caleb, part admiration, part something deeper, the way a boy looks at a father. But Caleb had said he lived here not exactly alone, which meant Jesse wasn't his son. Another stray, she thought. Another lost soul he'd picked up along the way. It should have made her trust him more. Instead, it made her more confused than ever. After breakfast, Clara insisted on doing the dishes. Caleb didn't argue, just took Jesse out to check on the horses. Through the window she could see them walking toward the corral, Jesse talking animatedly, while Caleb listened with that same quiet patience. Lily sat at the table watching Clara scrub plates. "Mama." "Yes, sweetheart." "Is this place safe?" Clara's hands stilled in the water. She turned to look at her daughter. Really look. Lily's face was thin pale beneath her sunburn. But her eyes were brighter than they'd been since the night they fled. Something in this place had reached her, even if Clara couldn't understand what. "I don't know," Clara said honestly. "But it's safer than where we were. Can we stay?" The question caught Clara off guard. "What? Can we stay here?" Lily clutched her rag doll tighter. "The boy is nice, and the man isn't scary, and there are flowers." Clara dried her hands slowly, buying time to choose her words. "Baby, we can't just stay at a stranger's house. He has his own life. We'd be in the way. But you said we needed somewhere Uncle Virgil can't find us. Lily's voice rose. Maybe he can't find us here. Maybe nobody can. Lily. I don't want to run anymore, Mama. Tears welled in those two old eyes. My feet hurt, and I'm tired, and I miss my bed, and I miss Daddy, and I don't want to run anymore. Clara crossed to her daughter and knelt down, gathering her into her arms. Lily sobbed against her shoulder. Deep, shuddering sobs that she'd been holding back for 11 days. I know, baby, I know. Why does Uncle Virgil hate us? Clara held her tighter. He doesn't hate us. He's just greedy. He wants things that aren't his. Like our house, and our land. And everything Daddy worked so hard to build. Clara pulled back, wiping tears from Lily's cheeks. But we're not going to let him have it. You hear me? We're going to find a way to fight back. We just need time to figure out how. What if he finds us before we figure it out? Clara thought of the pistol in her carpet bag, the one she didn't know how to shoot. He won't, she said with a confidence she didn't feel. I won't let him. The front door opened. Caleb stepped inside, removing his hat. He took in the scene, Clara kneeling on the floor, Lily's tear-streaked face, and his expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Jesse's showing your girl the chickens, he said. If you don't mind. Clara looked at Lily, who was already pulling away, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. Can I, Mama? Clara hesitated, then nodded. Lily ran for the door, nearly crashing into Caleb as she passed. He stepped aside smoothly, letting her through, and watched her go before turning back to Clara. There's coffee left, he said, if you want to talk. It wasn't a question. Not really. More like an observation that talking needed to happen. Clara stood slowly, brushing off her dress. There's nothing to talk about. That's so. We're leaving after breakfast, like I said. Caleb poured 2 cups of coffee and set one on the table. He sat down across from the empty chair, waiting. Clara didn't sit. Why did you bring us here? You were stuck in the mud. That's not what I mean. She wrapped her arms around herself. You could have dug out the wheel and sent us on our way. You didn't have to offer us a place to sleep. No, I didn't. So why? Caleb took a slow sip of coffee. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. 5 years ago, I was a Texas Ranger, best shot in the company, pride of the hill country. He set the cup down. Then one day I walked into a standoff in a little town called Red Fork. Bank robbers, 3 of them. They had hostages. I thought I could take the shot. Clara's hands tightened on her arms. The bullet went through the robber all right, but it didn't stop there. Caleb's jaw flexed. 12-year-old boy standing behind him, gone before he hit the ground. The kitchen was very quiet. I turned in my badge that night, couldn't hold a gun for 2 years after. Still can't some days. He met her eyes. So when I see a woman running scared with a little girl, I don't ride past. I don't tell myself it's none of my business, because I know what happens when good people do nothing. Clara felt the wall around her heart crack a little more. I'm not a good person, she said. I've been lying to you since we met. I know. She stared at him. You know? I know you're running from something worse than bandits. I know that ring on your finger's been twisted like you can't decide whether to take it off. I know you ain't slept more than a few hours at a stretch in days, maybe weeks. He leaned back in his chair. I don't need to know the details. I just need to know if whoever's after you is likely to bring trouble to my door. Clara's throat tightened. She thought of Virgil, his connections, his money, his absolute certainty that he could do whatever he pleased. Yes, she said finally. He'll bring trouble. He's my brother-in-law. My husband died 2 months ago, and now he wants everything William left me. The ranch, the cattle, all of it. He's got lawyers and forged documents and probably half the county sheriff's office in his pocket. She took a breath. His name is Virgil Whitmore, and he won't stop until he finds me." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for his coffee cup again. "Whitmore," he said slowly. "Cattle family out of Austin." Clara's blood ran cold. "You know him?" "Know of him. Knew his brother, your husband, I reckon. Met him once at a cattle auction in San Marcos. Decent man, honest." Caleb took a sip. "Heard he died in a bank robbery." "He did." "Heard it was random. Wrong place, wrong time." Clara's hands started to shake. "That's what everyone says." Caleb set down his cup. His eyes were sharp, now focused. "But you don't believe it." The words came out before she could stop them. Virgil knew exactly when William would be at that bank. He knew the deposit amount, the route, everything. And 3 weeks after the funeral, I found him forging my signature on documents that would transfer everything to his name. Her voice cracked. "He planned it. All of it. I can't prove it, but I know." The weight of saying it out loud finally to someone who might actually listen nearly buckled her knees. Caleb stood slowly. He crossed to the window and looked out at the yard where Jesse and Lily were now chasing chickens in wide laughing circles. "How many men does he have?" "2 that follow him everywhere. Colt and Decker. There might be more." "And he's been tracking you for 11 days. "Yes." Caleb turned. His face was stone, but his eyes burned. "Then he'll find you eventually. A man like that with those resources, he'll find you no matter how far you run." Clara's heart sank. "I know. So you've got 2 choices." Caleb walked back to the table. "Keep running until he catches up, or stop running and make a stand." "I can't make a stand. I don't have anything, no money, no allies, nothing." "You've got a gun you don't know how to use." Caleb's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "That's something. It's not enough." "No." He looked at her steadily. "It's not, but it's a start." Clara didn't understand what he was offering, or maybe she did, and she was afraid to believe it. "Why would you help me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "That boy I killed," he said finally. "His name was Samuel. He was 12 years old, and he wanted to be a rancher when he grew up. His mama told me that after. When she was screaming at me to bring him back." He pulled something from his pocket, a small worn photograph, edges soft from years of handling. "I can't bring him back. Can't undo what I did. But I can make sure the next Samuel has a chance." He looked toward the window, toward Lily's laughing figure in the yard. "And that little girl out there. She's got eyes just like he did. Old eyes. Seen too much eyes." Clara felt tears burning behind her own. "I can't ask you to risk your life for us." "You ain't asking." Caleb tucked the photograph back into his pocket. "I'm offering." He extended his hand. "Stay. Learn to shoot. Let Jesse teach your girl how to laugh again. And when Virgil Whitmore comes, because he will come, we'll be ready." Clara looked at his hand. Rough, calloused, scarred from work and time and choices that couldn't be unmade. She thought of all the reasons to say no. The danger she'd be bringing to his door. The risk to Jesse, to this fragile piece he'd built for himself. But she also thought of Lily's face this morning, the first spark of hope she'd seen since William died. She took his hand. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll stay." The first lesson came at dawn. Clara had barely slept, her mind churning with doubt and desperate hope. When she heard boots on the porch, she was already dressed, already waiting. Caleb stood outside with 2 pistols laid across a fence post. "You ever fired one of these before?" "No." "Then we start from the beginning." He picked up the smaller revolver and held it out to her. "This was my mother's. Lighter than most. Good for learning." Clara took it. The metal was cool against her palm, heavier than she expected. "First thing." Caleb stepped behind her, adjusting her stance with careful hands. "Feet apart, shoulder width. You ain't trying to look pretty. You're trying not to fall over when it kicks. Does it kick hard? Hard enough to knock you flat if you ain't ready. He guided her arms up. Both hands. Grip it like you mean it. This ain't a teacup. Clara tightened her hold. Now, see that fence post? Caleb pointed to a weathered stake 20 feet away. Don't aim for the middle. Aim for the top. Gun's gonna pull down when you fire. You aim high, you hit center. That doesn't make sense. Ain't about making sense. It's about physics. He stepped back. When you're ready, pull the trigger slow and steady. Don't jerk it. Clara's finger found the trigger. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She squeezed. The gun roared. The recoil slammed through her arms into her shoulders, nearly wrenching the weapon from her grip. Her shot went wild, kicking up dirt somewhere to the left of everything. Again, Caleb said. Clara's ears were ringing. I missed by a mile. So you'll miss by half a mile next time. Again. She raised the pistol. Fired. Missed. Again. Fired. Missed. Again. By the 10th shot, her arms were shaking. By the 20th, she couldn't feel her fingers. But somewhere around the 30th, the bullet finally struck wood. Clara stared at the fence post at the small gouge near the top. I hit it. You nicked it. Caleb reloaded her gun. Ain't the same as hitting a man who's shooting back. It's something. It's a start. He handed her the pistol. Now do it again. 50 more times. Then we'll talk about moving targets. Clara groaned, but she raised the gun. Behind them, the kitchen door creaked open. Jesse's voice carried across the yard. Lily? Come look. She's actually shooting. Clara glanced back. Lily stood on the porch in her nightgown, ragdoll dangling from one hand, watching her mother with wide eyes. Mama's learning to fight, Lily said softly. Something in those words, the wonder, the hope, straightened Clara's spine. She turned back to the fence post and fired. This time, she hit it dead center. The days folded into each other like pages in a worn book. Clara rose at dawn for shooting practice. By the third morning, her groupings had tightened from scattered chaos to something resembling intention. By the fifth, she could hit a tin can at 30 paces 3 times out of 5. Not bad, Caleb said, which she was learning meant good in his sparse vocabulary. Not bad isn't good enough. No, it ain't. He set up 3 more cans. So keep going. Between lessons, Clara threw herself into the work of the ranch. She mended clothes that Jesse had torn climbing fences. She cooked meals from whatever provisions the pantry held. She learned to gather eggs without getting pecked, though the red hen still seemed to hold a personal grudge. And slowly, Lily began to change. It started small. A word here, a question there. Jesse had appointed himself her official guide to ranch life, and he took the job seriously. This one's butterscotch. Jesse held up a golden chicken. She's the nice one. And that one over there. He pointed to a fierce-looking rooster. That's General Houston. He'll peck your toes off if you ain't careful. Lily giggled. Actually giggled. Clara, watching from the porch, felt tears prick her eyes. She's doing better, Caleb said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. She hasn't laughed like that since before William died. Clara took the cup, wrapping her fingers around the warmth. Jesse's good for her. Jesse's good for everyone. Boy could talk a thunderstorm into sunshine. Caleb's mouth twitched. Found him half-starved outside a burned-out homestead 3 years back. Parents died of fever. He'd been alone for weeks, living on whatever he could scavenge. Clara's chest tightened. That's terrible. It was. Is. Caleb sipped his coffee. But he don't dwell on it. That's the thing about kids. They can carry weight that would break grown folks and still find reasons to smile. Clara looked at her daughter now, chasing Jesse around the chicken coop, her rag doll forgotten on a fence post. How do you do it? She asked quietly. Carry the weight, I mean, without letting it crush you. Caleb was silent for a long moment. "You don't carry it alone," he said finally. "That's the trick. Find someone to help shoulder the load, even if it's just a little." His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, an understanding that didn't need words. Clara looked away first. "I should start dinner," she said. "I'll bring in some wood." They moved apart, but the moment lingered like smoke from a dying fire. That evening, a visitor came. Clara heard the wagon before she saw it, the creak of wheels, the steady clop of a horse. She grabbed her pistol and moved to the window. "Easy." Caleb appeared beside her. "That's Ruth McGraw, neighbor from 3 miles east. She stops by every week or so. Is she safe?" "Safer than most." He headed for the door. "Put the gun away. You'll scare her." Clara tucked the pistol into her apron pocket, unwilling to be completely unarmed. The woman who climbed down from the wagon was past 60, with silver hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, and a face weathered by decades of sun and hard work. She carried a covered basket in one arm. "Caleb Stone." Her voice carried across the yard. "I heard you had visitors. Thought I'd come see for myself if you'd finally lost your mind." "Ruth." Caleb tipped his hat. "Good to see you too." "Don't you sweet-talk me." She marched up the porch steps, eyes immediately finding Clara. "So, you're the woman." Clara straightened. "I'm Clara Whitmore." "I know who you are. Word travels fast when a stranger shows up at the Hermit's Ranch." Ruth studied her with shrewd eyes. "You look half-starved and scared. 2 things that don't mix well with pride." "I'm not—" "Save it. I've been reading faces longer than you've been alive." Ruth thrust the basket toward her. "Biscuits, jam, some of that ham I smoked last fall. Figured you could use a proper meal." Clara took the basket speechless. Ruth was already pushing past her into the house. "Where's this little girl I heard about?" "In the barn with Jesse." "Well, fetch her. I didn't ride 3 miles in this heat to admire the wallpaper." Clara looked at Caleb, bewildered. "Just go with it," he said. "It's easier." 20 minutes later, they were all seated around the kitchen table. Clara, Caleb, Ruth, Jesse, and Lily eating ham and biscuits while Ruth held court. "So let me understand this." Ruth pointed her fork at Caleb. "You found this woman stuck in a creek bed, brought her home, and now you're teaching her to shoot. That's about the size of it. And you didn't think to mention this when I stopped by last week. You stopped by for 5 minutes, to complain about coyotes. I also brought you peach preserves." Ruth sniffed, "which apparently counts for nothing." Lily was watching the exchange with wide eyes. Jesse leaned over and whispered, "She's always like this. But she's nice. She gives me candy when Caleb ain't looking." "I heard that," Caleb said. "No, you didn't." Ruth laughed, a big warm sound that filled the kitchen. "I like you, boy." She turned to Clara. "Now, what's really going on here, and don't give me the varnished version. I've known Caleb since he was a ranger, and I know when he's playing hero." Clara's hands tightened on her coffee cup. "It's complicated. Life usually is. Simplify it for me." Clara looked at Caleb. He gave a small nod. "My husband died 2 months ago," Clara said slowly. "His brother is trying to steal my inheritance. He's been chasing me for 11 days. He has money lawyers and men who do whatever he says." Ruth's expression didn't change, but something hardened in her eyes. "This brother. He got a name. Virgil Whitmore." Ruth set down her fork. "Well, that's a complication indeed." Clara's blood chilled. "You know him, know of him. Man's got a reputation stretching from here to Houston." Ruth leaned back in her chair. "Bought out 3 ranches in the last 2 years. Owners all sold for pennies on the dollar under various persuasions." "What kind of persuasions?" "The kind that start with lawyers and end with funerals." Ruth's voice was flat. "Nothing ever proven, mind you. Man's too smart for that. But folks around here know. When Virgil Whitmore wants something, he gets it, one way or another. Clara's stomach turned to ice. Then I'm not safe anywhere. Didn't say that. Ruth looked at Caleb. What's your play here? You just gonna hide her until Whitmore gives up, because that ain't happening. Caleb's jaw tightened. I'm teaching her to defend herself. Against 2 or 3 hired guns, with what 2 weeks of target practice. It's better than nothing. It's barely something. Ruth stood suddenly all business. You need more than shooting lessons, girl. You need information, proof of what Whitmore did. I don't have proof. I only have suspicions. Then we find proof. Ruth pulled on her gloves. I've got a nephew works as a clerk at the land office in Austin. He sees every deed, every transfer, every signature that passes through that county. If Whitmore forged documents, there'll be records. Clara's heart lurched. You'd do that, help a stranger. Ruth looked at her with something like pity. Honey, I've been a widow longer than you've been alive. I've seen men like Virgil Whitmore try to take everything from women like us. They count on us being alone, being scared, being too weak to fight back. She smiled grimly. They don't count on women like me still being alive and ornery enough to cause trouble. She headed for the door, then paused. Clara. Yes. That brother-in-law of yours. He'll come eventually. Make sure you're ready when he does. She left. The kitchen was quiet for a long moment. Then Jessie said, I told you she was nice. Despite everything, Clara laughed. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara found Caleb on the porch. He sat in the old rocking chair staring out at the darkness beyond the fence. A glass of whiskey rested untouched on the rail beside him. Mind if I join you? Free country. Clara settled onto the porch step, her back against the railing. The stars were impossibly bright, scattered across the sky like spilled salt. Ruth seemed intense. Ruth's been through more than most. Caleb rocked slowly. Lost her husband in the war. Lost 2 sons after that one to fever, one to a cattle stampede. She's earned the right to be intense. And she really thinks we can find proof against Virgil. Ruth's got connections I don't pretend to understand. If anyone can dig up dirt on Whitmore, it's her. Clara hugged her knees to her chest. The night air was warm, but she felt cold inside. Can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. A small smile. Ruth said she's known you since you were a ranger. She knows about what happened. The boy you... Clara stopped. Does everyone around here know? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Most folks, the ones who've been here long enough. He finally picked up his whiskey, took a sip. Weren't exactly a secret, made all the papers. Texas Ranger kills innocent child in botched raid. They crucified me, and they should have. But you stayed here, kept the ranch. Where else was I gonna go? His voice was flat. This was my family's land. My mother died here, my father too. I couldn't run from what I'd done. Still can't. Clara thought about that, about staying in the place where your worst memory lived, waking up every morning in the shadow of your greatest failure. Is that why you took in Jessie? Partly. Caleb set down his glass. Mostly I just saw a scared kid with nowhere to go and nobody to care. Figured I could at least give him a roof. You gave him more than that. He loves you. Jessie loves everybody. That's just his nature. No. Clara shook her head. The way he looks at you, that's not how a boy looks at just anybody. That's how he looks at his father. Caleb went very still. I ain't his father. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. Clara turned to look at him. You're the man he's going to measure himself against for the rest of his life. The man he's going to try to become. The words hung in the darkness. When Caleb finally spoke, his voice was rough. Then God help him, because I ain't much of a model. You're better than you think. Clara stood brushing off her dress. And for what it's worth, you're better than anyone I've met in a long, long time. She went inside before he could respond. A week passed, then 2. Clara's shooting improved steadily. She could now hit a moving target at 50 paces, one of Jesse's homemade wooden birds swinging from a rope. Her hands no longer shook when she held the pistol. Her stance was solid. Her aim was true. But more than that, something inside her was changing. The constant fear hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something harder, sharper. Every morning when she picked up that gun, she wasn't just learning to shoot. She was learning to fight, learning that she was capable of protecting herself and her daughter, whatever it took. Lily was changing too. She spoke more now full sentences instead of whispered fragments. She played with Jesse for hours, inventing elaborate games involving chickens, wooden swords, and an ongoing war against imaginary bandits. At night, she fell asleep quickly and deeply, without the nightmares that had plagued her since William's death. "She's different," Clara said to Caleb one morning, watching the children race each other to the barn. "She's starting to feel safe." "Safe is good. Safe is temporary." Clara's voice was flat. "Virgil's still out there, looking, waiting. Every day we stay here is another day he gets closer." Caleb was quiet. Then, "Ruth sent word yesterday. Her nephew found something." Clara's heart stopped. "What?" "She didn't say. Just that she's coming by this afternoon. Wants to tell us in person." The hours until Ruth's arrival stretched like taffy. Clara couldn't focus. She burned the cornbread. She dropped the laundry in the dirt. She checked her pistol 3 times, making sure it was loaded, making sure she remembered how to use it. When Ruth's wagon finally appeared on the ridge, Clara was waiting on the porch. Ruth climbed down slowly, her face unreadable. "Inside," she said. "The children shouldn't hear this." Jesse took Lily to the barn without being asked. He was young, but he understood when adults needed privacy. Ruth settled at the kitchen table. Caleb poured 3 cups of coffee. Clara sat across from the older woman, hands clasped tight in her lap. "What did you find?" Ruth pulled a folded paper from her pocket and laid it on the table. "The deed transfer your brother-in-law filed. The one that supposedly has your signature." She smoothed the creases. "My nephew compared it to other documents on file, your marriage certificate, the original deed when your husband bought the ranch." Clara's mouth went dry. "And the signatures don't match." Ruth tapped the paper. "Oh, they're close. Good forgeries. But the W in Whitmore curls different, and you cross your T's from left to right, the forgery goes right to left." Clara's heart hammered. "That's proof. It's evidence. Proof's a higher bar." Ruth's eyes were sharp. "But here's the interesting part. The notary who certified the transfer man named Cecil Drummond out of Austin. I don't know him. Nobody does, because Cecil Drummond don't exist." Ruth smiled grimly. "My nephew searched every record going back 10 years. No birth certificate, no property records, no tax filings. The man's a ghost." Caleb leaned forward. "Whitmore invented a notary to certify his own forgeries." "Appears so. And that ain't just fraud. That's conspiracy to commit fraud, impersonation of a legal official, and about 6 other charges I can think of off the top of my head." Clara felt like she might faint. "We can use this. We can go to the authorities." "Which authorities?" Ruth's voice was flat. "The sheriff in Austin, Whitmore, plays poker with him every Saturday. The circuit judge Whitmore funded his last campaign. You go to any official in that county, word'll get back to Virgil before you finish your first sentence." "Then what do we do?" Ruth looked at Caleb. "You know Judge Harrison over in Cedar Mill? Samuel Harrison knew his father. Haven't seen Sam in years. He's been made federal circuit judge now. Operates out of San Antonio, but he comes through Cedar Mill twice a month for cases." Ruth's eyes glinted. "Federal jurisdiction. That means Whitmore's local connections don't mean spit." Clara's hands trembled. "Could we actually bring charges against him in federal court?" "With this evidence, maybe. It's thin, but it's something. And once the case is opened, a federal marshal would have to investigate. They'd dig deeper, find more. Ruth leaned back. It's a long shot, but it's a shot. Hope, real actual hope, bloomed in Clara's chest for the first time in weeks. When does Judge Harrison come through Cedar Mill next? 3 days. Ruth stood. Which is why you need to start preparing now. Write down everything. Every conversation with Virgil, every suspicious detail, every date and place. Federal judges want facts, not feelings. Clara was already mentally cataloging. The night she found the forged documents, Virgil's threats, the burned deed, the riders who'd been following her since Austin. I can do that. Good. Caleb, you'll go with her to Cedar Mill. 2's safer than 1. Already planning on it. Ruth nodded, satisfied. I'll spread word among the neighbors. If any of Whitmore's men come sniffing around while you're gone, they'll find the roads. Difficult. Clara rose impulsively, taking Ruth's hand. Why are you helping me? You barely know me. Ruth's weathered face softened, just for a moment. Because I was you once. 30 years ago, after my husband died, a man tried to take everything, my land, my cattle, my dignity. Said a woman couldn't run a ranch alone. Her grip tightened. I proved him wrong. Nearly killed me doing it, but I proved him wrong. Every woman who fights back, she's carrying that fight forward for all of us. Clara couldn't speak, but she nodded. Ruth patted her hand and released it. 3 days. Be ready. She left, and Clara watched her wagon disappear down the road. 3 days, 72 hours. The first step toward reclaiming everything Virgil had stolen. For the first time since she'd fled, Clara allowed herself to believe she might actually win. The night before they were supposed to leave for Cedar Mill, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in the darkness, running through her testimony in her head. Every fact, every date, every piece of evidence that would convince a federal judge that Virgil Whitmore was a murderer and a thief. Somewhere around midnight, she gave up and went to the kitchen. Caleb was already there. He sat at the table, cleaning his pistol by lamplight. The gun he hadn't touched in years, Ruth had told her. The one he'd put away after Samuel. Couldn't sleep either. Clara poured herself water from the pitcher. Too much thinking. Know the feeling. She sat across from him, watching his hands work. Steady, methodical, familiar with every piece despite the years of disuse. You don't have to come tomorrow, she said. I can go alone. No, you can't. I'm not your responsibility. Caleb's hand stilled. He looked up, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. Maybe not. But that ain't why I'm going. Then why? He was quiet for a long moment. 5 years ago, I made a choice. Took a shot when I shouldn't have. Cost a boy his life and destroyed his family. He set down the pistol. I've spent every day since trying to make peace with that, trying to find some way to balance the scales. And helping me does that. No. His voice was rough. Nothing balances those scales. Nothing ever will. But this protecting you, protecting Lily, it's something good. Something real. And I ain't gonna walk away from it just because it's dangerous. Clara's throat tightened. Caleb? You should get some sleep. He picked up the pistol again, breaking the moment. Long ride tomorrow. But Clara didn't move. Why did you really stop that day at the creek? You could have ridden past. Could have told yourself it wasn't your problem. Told you already. The woman I passed 5 years ago. That's not the whole truth. Clara leaned forward. I've seen how you look at me sometimes, when you think I'm not watching. And it's not just guilt. It's not just redemption. Caleb's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. When Caleb finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. You're a widow. With a child. Running from a man who wants to kill you. This ain't the time for what? He met her eyes. For me to admit that I think about you. More than I should. More than I've thought about anyone since. He stopped. Looked away. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. Caleb. Get some sleep, Clara. Please. She could push. She knew she could push, and he would break, and they would cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But something in his voice, the raw vulnerability beneath the roughness, made her stand instead. Good night, Caleb. Good night. She went to the door. Stopped. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad I got stuck in that creek bed. She didn't wait for his response. The last thing she heard before she closed her bedroom door was the soft click of him reassembling his gun. Dawn came too soon. Clara dressed quickly, strapped her pistol to her hip, and made sure her testimony notes were secure in her bodice. Caleb was already hitching the wagon when she stepped onto the porch. Children are still sleeping, he said. Ruth's sending her foreman to stay with them while we're gone. I don't want to leave Lily. I know, but she's safer here than on the road with us. Clara's chest ached, but she nodded. She went back inside, slipped into Lily's room, and kissed her daughter's forehead. Lily stirred, but didn't wake. I'll be back soon, baby, Clara whispered. I promise. Then she climbed into the wagon, and they rode out before the sun cleared the hills. They'd been on the road for 2 hours when Clara saw the dust. 3 riders coming fast from the south. Caleb. I see them. His hand moved to his pistol. Get down low. Don't show yourself. Clara ducked beneath the wagon seat, fingers closing around her own gun. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer, then a voice, cold familiar, dripping with satisfaction. Well, well, there she is, just like I said she'd be. Clara's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. Hello, Clara. Virgil Whitmore rode into view flanked by 2 men with rifles. Did you really think you could run forever? Clara's fingers tightened on her pistol. Through the gap beneath the wagon seat, she could see Virgil's polished boots, his fine gray coat, the silver gleam of the watch chain at his vest. He looked like he was attending a business meeting, not hunting down a woman in the Texas wilderness. Come out, Clara. His voice was patient, almost kind. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Caleb hadn't moved. His hand rested on his pistol, but he hadn't drawn. You must be the Good Samaritan. Virgil's horse stepped closer. Caleb Stone, isn't it the ranger who shot that boy in Red Fork? Clara felt Caleb stiffen beside her. Oh yes, I know all about you. Virgil chuckled. Did my research before riding out here. Disgraced lawman living alone on a failing ranch, playing father to some orphan brat. Quite the fall from grace. What do you want, Whitmore? What I've always wanted. My brother's widow and the papers she stole from me. She didn't steal anything. Caleb's voice was steady. You forged those documents. We can prove it. Virgil's smile didn't waver. Can you, to whom the sheriff who dines at my table, the judge who owes me $3,000? He spread his hands. I own this territory, Mr. Stone. Every lawman, every official, every man with a badge and a gun. You think one washed-up ranger and a hysterical widow can touch me? Federal judge might feel different. Something flickered in Virgil's eyes. Just for a second. Ah, so that's where you were headed. Cedar Mill. He nodded slowly. Smart. Smarter than I gave Clara credit for. But it doesn't matter. You're not going to reach Cedar Mill. His hand moved to his holster. Caleb drew first. The shot cracked across the morning air. One of Virgil's men jerked backward in his saddle, clutching his shoulder rifle, clattering to the ground. Ride! Caleb grabbed the reins and whipped the horses forward. The wagon lurched. Clara tumbled against the seat, grabbing for purchase as another shot whizzed past her ear. She heard Virgil cursing, heard hoofbeats thundering behind them. Stay down! Caleb fired again without looking, driving the horses harder. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She fumbled for her pistol, raised it over the seat back, and squeezed the trigger. The kick nearly threw her off the wagon. She didn't know if she hit anything. "Keep shooting." Caleb hauled on the reins, taking a sharp turn onto a narrow trail. "Don't aim, just keep their heads down." Clara fired again. Again. The gun bucked in her hands, the shots wild and desperate. Behind them she heard a scream. One of the horses went down. "You hit him." Caleb's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "Good girl." But they weren't out of danger. Virgil was still coming, and his remaining man was gaining. The wagon hit a rut. Clara flew forward, smashing her chin against the seat. Stars exploded behind her eyes. She tasted blood. "Clara." "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. Her vision was swimming, but she raised the pistol again. Click. Empty. "I'm out!" Caleb tossed her his spare without looking. She caught it, fumbled with the unfamiliar weight, and forced herself to focus. "Aim high, squeeze, don't jerk, breathe." She fired. The shot caught Virgil's remaining man in the leg. He toppled from his horse with a howl of pain, but Virgil kept coming. "Caleb, he's still—" "I know." Caleb's jaw was tight. "Hold on." He yanked the reins hard to the left. The wagon careened off the trail, crashing through brush and scrub. Branches clawed at Clara's face. She ducked, shielding her head with her arms. They burst into a clearing. Caleb pulled the horses to a stop. "Out! Now!" Clara jumped down, legs nearly buckling beneath her. Caleb was already pulling rifles from the wagon bed. "The rocks! Over there! Go!" She ran, boots stumbling over uneven ground. Behind her she heard the pound of a single horse drawing closer, closer. She threw herself behind a boulder, Caleb sliding in beside her. "How many shots you got left?" Clara checked the cylinder. 4. "Make them count." Virgil's horse appeared at the edge of the clearing. He sat tall in the saddle, not even breathing hard, as if the chase had been nothing more than a morning ride. "This is foolish." He dismounted slowly, drawing his own pistol. "You're outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched. Give me Clara, and you walk away." "Like hell." "Mr. Stone." Virgil stepped forward, weapon raised. "I don't want to kill you. You're not part of this. You're just a broken man who made the mistake of caring." "Seems to be a habit of mine." "One that's going to get you buried in this clearing." Virgil cocked his pistol. "Last chance. Hand her over." Caleb's response was to fire. The bullet grazed Virgil's arm. He cursed, ducking behind his horse. "You'll regret that, Ranger." "Already got a long list of regrets." Caleb fired again. "One more won't make a difference." The exchange was brutal and brief. Bullets ricocheted off rocks. Clara pressed herself flat, heart-pounding counting shots. Then Caleb's gun clicked empty. Virgil heard it. His smile returned. "Well, looks like the heroes run dry." Clara's hand trembled on her pistol. 4 shots. She had 4 shots left. Virgil stepped out from behind his horse. "Clara, darling, put down the gun. We both know you can't hit me from there." "Don't be so sure." Her voice shook, but she kept the weapon raised. "I've been practicing." "Have you?" "How charming." He took another step. "But there's a difference between shooting tin cans and shooting a man. Can you really do it? Look me in the eye and pull the trigger." Clara's finger tightened. She thought of William bleeding on the bank floor. She thought of Lily's nightmares. She thought of every night she'd spent running, terrified, alone. "Yes," she said. She fired. The shot caught Virgil in the shoulder. He staggered, eyes wide with shock. "You shot me." "I warned you." Clara rose from behind the rock's pistol, still aimed at his chest. "Get on your horse and ride away. Now." Virgil's face twisted with rage. "You think this is over? You think one bullet changes anything?" He laughed, blood seeping through his fingers, where he clutched his shoulder. "I have 12 men, 100 men. I'll burn that ranch to the ground. I'll take your daughter and sell her to the highest bidder. Clara shot him again, this time in the leg. Virgil collapsed, screaming. Caleb. Clara's voice was eerily calm. Do we have rope? 10 minutes later, Virgil was tied to his own horse, bleeding and cursing. You'll hang for this. He spat at Clara's feet. Both of you, I'll see you swing. Maybe. Caleb finished the last knot. But first you'll have to explain to a federal judge why you forged documents, hired men to hunt down a widow, and tried to steal your dead brother's estate. Virgil's face paled. You don't have proof. Actually, we do. Clara pulled the folded paper from her bodice, the evidence Ruth's nephew had gathered. Signatures that don't match. A notary who doesn't exist. And now attempted murder of 2 witnesses. She smiled coldly. You should have stayed in Austin, Virgil. For the first time, real fear flickered in Virgil's eyes. We can make a deal. I'll give you money, half the estate. You can... I don't want your money. Clara stepped close, looking into the eyes of the man who had destroyed her life. I want justice, and I'm going to get it. She turned away. Caleb, how far to Cedar Mill? 8 miles. We can make it by noon. Then let's go. They rode in silence. Virgil's horse tethered behind them. The man had stopped talking somewhere around mile 3, his face gray with pain and blood loss. Clara didn't care. She kept her eyes on the road ahead, her hand steady on the pistol in her lap. The fear that had lived in her chest for weeks was still there, but it had changed, transformed, become something harder and sharper. She wasn't running anymore. Caleb glanced at her sideways. How are you holding up? I shot a man. Clara's voice was flat. Twice. He deserved worse. I know. She swallowed. I thought I'd feel different, sick or guilty or something. Do you... Clara considered the question honestly. No. I feel like I finally fought back. Like I finally stopped being the woman things happen to and started being the woman who makes things happen. Caleb was quiet for a moment. William would be proud. The words hit Clara harder than she expected. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. I hope so. They reached Cedar Mill just past noon. The town was small but bustling with a general store, a saloon, and most importantly, a federal courthouse. Caleb helped Clara down from the wagon, then hauled Virgil off his horse. The man could barely stand, but Caleb wasn't gentle. Walk. I need a doctor. You'll get one, after you see the judge. They attracted stares as they moved through town. A bleeding man being dragged toward the courthouse wasn't a common sight, even on the frontier. The marshal met them at the door. What in God's name? This man is Virgil Whitmore. Clara stepped forward, her voice strong. He's wanted for fraud, forgery, and attempted murder. I have evidence, and I want to file charges with Judge Harrison. The marshal looked at Virgil, at the blood, at the 2 dusty strangers with steel in their eyes. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to start from the beginning. Gladly. 3 hours later, Clara sat in the judge's chambers, her throat raw from talking. She had told him everything. Every detail, every date, every piece of evidence Ruth's nephew had uncovered. She had shown him the forged documents, explained the fake notary described Virgil's threats, and the men he'd sent after her. Judge Harrison, a stern man in his 60s with white hair and sharp eyes, had listened without interrupting. Now he set down the papers and looked at her. Mrs. Whitmore, if even half of what you've told me is true, your brother-in-law is looking at federal charges that could put him away for 20 years. Clara's heart soared. However, the judge raised a hand. The evidence, while compelling, is circumstantial. The signature analysis would need to be confirmed by an expert. The missing notary could be explained as a clerical error. And Mr. Whitmore's lawyers will certainly argue that you shot him in cold blood, not self-defense. He was going to kill me. I believe you, but a jury might not. Harrison folded his hands. I'm going to issue a warrant for his arrest and schedule a preliminary hearing in 2 weeks. In the meantime, he'll be held in federal custody. What about me? Am I free to go? You're not under arrest, Mrs. Whitmore. You were defending yourself against an armed assailant. The judge almost smiled. Though I'd recommend you stay available for the hearing, and perhaps avoid shooting anyone else in the interim. Clara nearly laughed with relief. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. Whitmore has money and influence. He'll fight these charges with everything he has. I know. Clara stood squaring her shoulders. But I've been running for weeks. I'm ready to fight. She walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun. Caleb was waiting on the steps. Well, he's being held. Federal charges. Hearing in 2 weeks. Clara let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. It's not over, but it's a start. Caleb nodded. Something like relief flickered across his weathered face. We should get back to the ranch. Jesse and Lily. I know. Clara's stomach tightened at the thought of her daughter. Let's go. They rode hard, pushing the horses as fast as they dared. The sun was already dipping toward the horizon when they crested the final ridge. Clara saw the smoke first, black and thick, rising from somewhere beyond the hill. No. The word tore out of her. No, no, no. Caleb whipped the horses forward. They careened down the slope around the bend, and then the ranch came into view. The barn was burning. Flames licked at the roof smoke pouring into the evening sky. The house still stood, but figures moved in the yard. Men. Armed men. And standing at the center of it all, held by a man with a knife to his throat, was Jesse. Caleb's wagon skidded to a halt. Don't come any closer. The man holding Jesse was Colt Virgil's man, the one Clara had shot in the shoulder. His arm was bandaged, but his grip on the boy was iron. One step, and the brat dies. Clara's heart stopped. Where was Lily? The girls inside. Decker stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. His leg was bandaged too. She'd shot him during the chase. Locked in the bedroom, crying for her mama. Clara's vision went red. Let them go. Caleb's voice was deadly calm. Your boss is in federal custody. This is over. Over. Colt laughed. Mr. Whitmore has friends everywhere. He'll be out by morning, and when he is, he's gonna want to know we handled things. Handled things how? The woman signs the papers, signs everything over. Then maybe we let the kids go. And if she doesn't, Colt pressed the knife harder against Jesse's throat. A thin line of blood appeared. Jesse whimpered. Then we start cutting. Clara's hand moved to her pistol, but Caleb grabbed her wrist. Don't. You can't make that shot without risking Jesse. I can't just stand here. Clara, look at me. Caleb's eyes burned into hers. I'm going to fix this, but I need you to trust me. How? How can you trust me? He released her wrist and stepped forward, hands raised. All right. His voice carried across the yard. You want something to trade? Take me instead. Clara's blood froze. Caleb, no. Shut up, Clara. He didn't look at her. I'm the one who shot your men. I'm the one who took Virgil to the courthouse. The woman's just a pawn. I'm the real problem. Colt hesitated. What are you playing at? No games. You let the boy go, and I'll come over there, unarmed. Caleb slowly unbuckled his gun belt and let it fall. Then we can negotiate. Caleb! Clara's voice broke. Don't do this. Take care of Lily. He said it quietly, almost gently. Whatever happens, promise me. I can't. Promise me. Tears streamed down Clara's face. I promise. Caleb walked forward, hands still raised. Colt watched him approach, greed and suspicion warring on his face. Stop there. 10 feet. Caleb stopped. Let the boy go. First you get on your knees. Caleb knelt. The dirt was hard beneath him. The evening air smelled of smoke and fear. Now the boy. Colt shoved Jesse forward. The child stumbled, fell, scrambled to his feet, and ran not toward Clara, but toward the house. "Lily!" Jesse screamed. "I'm coming!" Decker raised his rifle. Caleb moved. He grabbed a rock from the ground and hurled it at Decker's head. The man ducked, rifle swinging wild. Caleb was already charging, tackling Colt before he could react. They went down in a tangle of limbs. The knife flew from Colt's hand. "Clara!" Caleb roared. "The rifle!" She didn't think. She ran for Decker. The man was still recovering from the thrown rock, cursing, trying to aim. Clara hit him low, driving her shoulder into his wounded leg. He screamed. They crashed to the ground together. The rifle skittered away. Clara lunged for it. Her fingers closed around the stock. She rolled, brought it up, aimed. Decker was already pulling a pistol from his belt. Clara fired first. The shot took him in the chest. He crumpled. Across the yard, Caleb had Colt pinned. His fist connected with the man's jaw once, twice, 3 times. Colt went limp. Silence fell. Then from inside the house, a small voice. "Mama!" Clara dropped the rifle and ran. She burst through the front door, down the hall to the bedroom where Ruth's foreman lay unconscious by the window. Hit from behind, Clara realized when Virgil's men came. And there in the corner, huddled together, were Lily and Jesse. Jesse had his arms wrapped around the smaller girl, shielding her with his body. Lily was crying, but she was alive. Unhurt. "Mama!" Clara fell to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. It's over." Lily sobbed against her chest. Jesse stood beside them, trembling but trying to look brave. "I protected her." His voice shook. "Like Caleb taught me. I kept her safe." Clara reached out and pulled him into the embrace too. "You did good, sweetheart. You did so good." Footsteps behind her. Caleb appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, knuckles bloody. His eyes found hers. "Everyone all right?" Clara looked at her daughter, at Jesse, at this man who had risked everything for people he barely knew. "Yes." Her voice cracked. "We're all right." Outside, the barn continued to burn. Somewhere, Ruth's foreman groaned back to consciousness. The world was still dangerous, still uncertain. But in that moment, holding her daughter surrounded by people who had become family, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe. The barn burned until morning. Clara stood at the kitchen window, watching the last embers smolder into ash. Behind her, Ruth was bandaging the foreman's head. Jesse and Lily had finally fallen asleep in the back room, curled together like 2 puppies after a storm. Caleb came in from the yard, soot streaking his face and arms. "Horses are safe. Got them out before the roof collapsed." He poured water from the basin, scrubbing his hands. "Lost most of the feed, though. And the tools." "Can you rebuild?" "Eventually." He dried his hands, not looking at her. "If there's time." Clara understood what he meant. The hearing was in 12 days. Virgil was in custody, but his men had proven they could reach this ranch whenever they wanted. "We should move the children." Ruth's voice was firm. "Take them somewhere Whitmore's people can't find." "Where?" Clara turned. "Where in Texas is safe from a man like Virgil?" "My place. It's smaller, harder to approach, and my neighbors owe me enough favors to stand guard if needed." Caleb shook his head. "Split us up. We're weaker. We stay together. And wait for the next attack. With children in the house." "Ruth. She's right." Clara's voice cut through. Both of them turned to look at her. "Lily and Jesse shouldn't be here. Not while Virgil still has men out there." "Clara, you can't—" "I can't lose her, Caleb." Her voice cracked. "I can't watch my daughter die because I was too stubborn to send her somewhere safe. If Ruth can protect her, then Lily goes with Ruth." The kitchen fell silent. Caleb's jaw worked. Clara could see the conflict in his eyes, the instinct to keep everyone close warring with the logic of what she was saying. Jesse too. His voice was rough. Jesse too. Ruth stood wincing at her stiff joints. I'll take them at first light. My foreman can stay here with you two. No. Caleb moved toward the door. Tom's hurt. He needs rest. Clara and I can handle whatever comes. You sure about that? He looked at Clara. Something passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of what they were about to face. Yeah, he said. I'm sure. Dawn came gray and heavy. Clara knelt beside Lily's sleeping form, memorizing every detail of her daughter's face. The curve of her cheek, the flutter of her lashes, the small hand still clutching the rag doll. Mama? Lily's eyes opened, clouded with sleep. Hey, sweetheart. Clara smoothed her hair. You're going on a little trip with Mrs. McGraw, just for a few days. Why? Because I need you to be safe. And Mrs. McGraw has chickens too. Jessie says she even has a goat. I don't want to go. Lily's lip trembled. I want to stay with you. Clara's heart shattered. I know, baby, I know. She pulled her daughter close. But remember what I said. Sometimes we have to be apart so we can be together later. I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? Lily sniffled. Will you come back? I promise. You promised Daddy would come back too. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. She held Lily tighter, fighting the tears that burned behind her eyes. I know I did, and I was wrong. I couldn't keep that promise. She pulled back, cupping her daughter's face. But this time is different. This time I'm fighting to make sure nobody takes me away. And I'm going to win. Lily searched her mother's eyes for a long moment. Okay, she whispered finally. I'll be brave. That's my girl. Clara kissed her forehead, then stood on shaking legs. Jesse was waiting by the wagon, his face pale but determined. I'll take care of her, he said. I promise. I know you will. Clara squeezed his shoulder. You're a good boy, Jesse. The best. He flushed, looking down at his boots. Caleb appeared beside them. He crouched to Jesse's level. You remember what I taught you. Stay alert. Trust your instincts. Run if you have to. And don't be a hero unless there's no other choice. Caleb nodded slowly. Then, surprising everyone, he pulled the boy into a rough embrace. I'll see you soon. You better. Jesse's voice was muffled against Caleb's shoulder. I still gotta teach Lily how to fish. Ruth climbed into the wagon seat. We're burning daylight. Let's move. Clara lifted Lily into the wagon bed. The child clung to her for one more moment, then let go. The wagon rolled away. Clara watched until it disappeared over the ridge, until the dust settled, until she couldn't pretend anymore that her daughter might turn around and wave one last time. Then she turned to Caleb. What now? Now we get ready. His face was stone. Because when Virgil finds out his men failed, he's gonna send more, and we need to be ready to meet them. The next 3 days were brutal. Clara trained harder than ever, pushing through pain and exhaustion until her arms felt like lead and her vision blurred. Caleb didn't ease up. Again. I've shot 50 rounds today. Make it 100. Caleb, you think Virgil's men are going to care how tired you are? He slammed fresh ammunition onto the fence post. Again. She shot until her fingers bled. She ran drills until her lungs screamed. She practiced hand-to-hand combat until her whole body was one massive bruise. And through it all, Caleb was relentless. You hesitate, you die. I know. Do you? Because out there when the bullets start flying, thinking gets you killed. You have to move on instinct. I'm trying. Try harder. Clara's temper snapped. What do you want from me? She threw down her pistol. I'm not a ranger. I'm not a soldier. I'm a widow with a 5-year-old daughter who's never fired a gun in her life until 3 weeks ago. And in 3 weeks you've learned more than most men learn in 3 years? Caleb's voice rose to match hers. But it ain't enough. It ain't gonna be enough when Virgil sends 10 men or 20 or... Then what's the point? Tears streamed down her face. If we can't win, if there's no way out, why are we doing this? Caleb went still. The anger drained from his face, replaced by something rawer, more vulnerable. Because giving up ain't an option. He stepped closer. Because that little girl of yours is counting on you to come back. Because, his voice caught. Because I can't lose someone else. Clara's breath stuttered. Caleb! Forget it. He turned away. Take a break. We'll start again in an hour. No. She grabbed his arm. Don't walk away from this. Clara. You said you think about me, more than you should. She moved around to face him. What did you mean? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. He looked at her, really looked for the first time since the attack. His eyes were tired, haunted, carrying the weight of years of solitude and regret. I stopped feeling anything a long time ago, he said slowly. After Red Fork, after I killed that boy, I shut everything down. It was easier that way, safer. And now, he shook his head. Now I feel things I don't know what to do with. Clara's heart pounded. What things? Hope. The words seemed to cost him. Fear. Something that might be... He stopped. Say it. I can't. Why not? Because if I say it out loud, it becomes real, and real things can be taken away. His voice was raw. I've lost enough, Clara. I can't lose you too. She reached up, touched his face. You're not going to lose me. You don't know that. No, I don't. Her thumb traced the line of his jaw. But I know that shutting down, pushing people away, that's its own kind of death. You taught me to fight. Now let me teach you to feel again. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Caleb's hand came up to cover hers. I don't know how anymore. Then we'll figure it out together. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, nothing like the desperate passion of young love. But it was real, and it was enough. When they finally broke apart, Caleb's eyes were wet. I ain't good at this, he said roughly. Neither am I. Clara smiled through her own tears. But maybe that's the point. The sound of hoofbeats shattered the moment. They sprang apart, reaching for their weapons. Clara's heart hammered as a rider appeared on the ridge. But it wasn't one of Virgil's men. It was the federal marshal from Cedar Mill. Mrs. Whitmore. He rode hard into the yard, reining his horse to a stop. Mr. Stone, there's been a development. What kind of development? Caleb's hand stayed on his pistol. The marshal dismounted, his face grim. Virgil Whitmore escaped custody last night. Clara's blood turned to ice. What? 2 of his men posed as federal transport. They killed 2 deputies and broke him out before anyone realized what was happening. Where is he now? We don't know. He could be anywhere. The marshal looked between them. Judge Harrison's ordered a full manhunt, but until we find him, he's coming here. Clara's voice was flat. He's coming here to finish what he started. That's what we're afraid of. I've been sent to offer you protective custody until... No. Everyone turned to look at Caleb. No! The marshal frowned. Mr. Stone, this man has already tried to kill you once. Protective custody is the safest. The safest thing is stopping him. Caleb's jaw was set. You put us in custody. We're sitting ducks. Whitmore has people everywhere. He got to your deputies. He'll get to whoever's guarding us. Then what do you suggest? Caleb looked at Clara. Something passed between them, a silent agreement. We draw him out, Clara said. Here, on ground we know. The marshal stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Ma'am, that's suicide. Maybe. but it's better than waiting for him to come for us when we're not ready. You can't seriously. Marshal. Caleb stepped forward. How many men can you spare? For a manhunt, a dozen maybe. But they're spread across 3 counties. Then round them up. Tell them Virgil Whitmore is coming to Stone Ranch. Tell them if they want to catch him, this is where he'll be. The marshal hesitated. You're asking me to use you as bait. I'm asking you to help us end this. Caleb's voice was hard. Before he hurts anyone else. The marshal looked at Clara, then back at Caleb. Judge Harrison won't like this. Judge Harrison isn't the one Virgil's trying to kill. A long pause. Then the marshal sighed. I'll send word to my deputies, but it'll take at least a day to get men in position. Then we have 1 day to get ready. The marshal remounted his horse. For what it's worth, Mrs. Whitmore, I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Clara thought as she watched him ride away. So do I. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Caleb reinforced the doors and windows. Clara stockpiled ammunition. They worked out escape routes, fallback positions, lines of fire. Ruth sent word that the children were safe. Clara clung to that message like a lifeline. By nightfall, they were as ready as they'd ever be. You should sleep, Caleb said as Clara cleaned her pistol for the 3rd time. Might be your last chance for a while. So should you. I will. Just... He trailed off. Just what? He was quiet for a moment. I keep thinking about what might happen tomorrow. Don't. Clara set down the pistol. That way lies madness. I know, but I can't help it. He looked at her, and for once his defenses were completely down. If something goes wrong, if I don't make it. Stop. Clara. No. She crossed to him, took his face in her hands. You don't get to say goodbye. Not yet. Not ever. It's not goodbye. It's just... He covered her hands with his own. Just in case. There is no just in case. We're going to survive this, both of us. And then we're going to figure out what comes next, together. She said it with a certainty she didn't entirely feel, but he needed to hear it. They both did. Caleb pulled her close. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the darkness. Not speaking, not needing to. When Clara finally pulled back, her eyes were dry. Let's get some rest. They slept in the same room that night, not touching but close enough to reach for each other if needed. Clara lay awake listening to Caleb's breathing, watching shadows move across the ceiling. She thought about William dead on a bank floor. She thought about Lily asleep in Ruth's spare room 3 miles away. She thought about all the choices that had led her to this moment, a burned ranch, a loaded pistol, a man she was just beginning to love. Somewhere around midnight, she finally slept. The riders came at dawn. Clara heard them before she saw them. The thunder of hooves, the crack of leather, the shouts of men who'd been riding hard through the night. She was on her feet, instantly, pistol in hand. Caleb. I hear them. He was already at the window, rifle raised. 15, maybe 20, coming from the east. That's too many. I know. Where are the marshals? Don't know. His jaw tightened. Might not have made it in time. Clara's stomach dropped. So we're on our own. Looks like it. Caleb glanced at her. You ready for this? Clara checked her pistol, took a deep breath. No, but I'm done running. She took position at the opposite window as the riders poured into the yard. Virgil was in front, mounted on a black horse arm in a sling from where Clara had shot him. His face was pale, twisted with pain and rage. Clara. His voice echoed across the yard. I know you're in there. Come out now and I'll make this quick. Caleb raised his rifle. Clara put her hand on his arm. Wait. For what? I need to see how many we're dealing with. She counted quickly. 18 men armed with rifles and pistols. Far more than she and Caleb could handle alone. But she'd noticed something else too. Ruth's wagon parked behind the far hill, and beside it, the glint of rifle barrels. "Caleb!" Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "We're not alone." He looked where she was pointing, and for the first time all morning he smiled. "Ruth, you beautiful, ornery woman." "Clara." Virgil's patience was fraying. "You have 10 seconds to come out or we burn this house down with you inside." Clara straightened. "That's not going to happen." She opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Virgil's eyes widened. "Well, the widow finally shows her face." He spurred his horse forward. "Where's your ranger friend?" "Right here." Caleb appeared beside her, rifle raised. "And we've got company." On cue, Ruth's voice rang out from the hilltop. "Virgil Whitmore, you're surrounded. Lay down your weapons." Virgil's men turned confused. From all directions, armed men and women emerged, neighbors, ranchers, people who'd been pushed around by Whitmore's kind for years. Clara counted at least 30. Virgil's face went white. "This is impossible." "No." Clara stepped forward. "This is what happens when you underestimate people who have nothing left to lose. You think a bunch of farmers can stop me. I think you're outnumbered 2-1. I think you're wounded. I think your men are tired from riding all night." Clara's voice was steel. "And I think you've run out of options." Virgil's hand moved toward his pistol. "Don't." Caleb's rifle leveled at his chest. "You won't clear leather before I put a hole through your heart." The yard was silent. Then slowly Virgil raised his hands. "You think this is over?" His voice shook with rage. "You think you've won? I think you're going back to federal custody." Clara signaled to Ruth. "And this time, you're going to stay there." Virgil's men began laying down their weapons one by one, but Virgil himself didn't move. "You should have signed those papers, Clara." His voice was soft now, almost conversational. "You should have taken my offer and walked away. None of this had to happen." "You're right." Clara walked toward him. "It didn't. You could have left us alone. You could have been satisfied with your own fortune instead of stealing William's." "William's fortune?" Virgil laughed. "You mean my father's fortune? The one William inherited just because he was born first. The one that should have been mine." Clara stopped. "Is that what this is about, birth order jealousy?" "You don't understand anything." Virgil's eyes blazed. "I watched William get everything, the land, the cattle, the respect, while I got nothing but scraps. And then he married you, and it was like salt in a wound. The perfect wife, the perfect family, everything I should have had." "So you killed him." The words hung in the air. Virgil's face went blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The bank robbery. You planned it. You knew exactly when William would be there, exactly how much he'd be carrying. Those robbers were your men." "You can't prove that." "Maybe not." Clara's voice was ice. "But Judge Harrison is going to have a lot of questions. And your men," she gestured to the captured gang, "might start talking when they realize they're looking at the gallows." Virgil's mask cracked. "You stupid woman. You think any of this matters? I'll be out in a week. I'll hire better lawyers, better men, and then I'll come back and finish what I started." "No." A new voice. "You won't." Everyone turned. The federal marshal rode into the yard flanked by a dozen deputies. "Virgil Whitmore, you're under arrest for escape from federal custody, murder of 2 deputies, attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." The marshal dismounted. "And this time, you're not walking away." 2 deputies hauled Virgil off his horse. He fought, cursing, struggling, all pretense of sophistication gone. "This isn't over, Clara. This isn't over." Clara watched him being dragged away. "Yes," she said quietly. "It is." Ruth's wagon rolled into the yard, and 2 small figures jumped out before it fully stopped. "Mama!" Lily ran across the yard and threw herself into Clara's arms. Clara sank to her knees, holding her daughter so tight she thought they might fuse together. Tears streamed down her face. Real tears, finally, of relief and joy and overwhelming love. "You came back," Lily sobbed. You promised, and you came back. I told you I would, baby. Clara kissed her hair, her cheeks, her forehead. I told you. Jesse had run straight to Caleb, who caught him in a fierce embrace. Is it over? Jesse asked, voice muffled against Caleb's chest. Is the bad man gone? Caleb looked at Clara, over the boy's head. She smiled, tears still falling. Yeah, Caleb said. The bad man's gone. Ruth climbed down from the wagon, moving slowly, but with her usual iron determination. Well, she surveyed the captured men, the relieved neighbors, the weeping mother and child. I'd say that's a job well done. How'd you know to come? Clara asked. I didn't. I just figured Whitmore would be too stupid to wait for a fair fight. Ruth snorted. Men like that always think they're the smartest person in the room. Makes them predictable. Clara laughed. Actually laughed. It felt foreign, almost wrong, but also wonderful. Thank you. She reached out to squeeze Ruth's weathered hand. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Ruth's eyes softened. We still got a hearing in 6 days, and a whole lot of rebuilding to do. Clara looked around at the burned barn, the bullet-scarred porch, the chaos of the past weeks. Yeah, she said, but we'll manage. She looked at Caleb, who was still holding Jesse, at Lily, who was clinging to her dress, at the neighbors who had risked their lives to help a woman they barely knew. We'll manage together. The courtroom in Cedar Mill was packed. Clara sat at the front, hands folded in her lap, watching as Judge Harrison reviewed the mountain of evidence spread across his bench. Beside her, Caleb sat rigid, his presence a steady anchor in the chaos. Ruth had insisted on coming. So had Jesse and Lily, though they sat in the back with Ruth's foreman too young to fully understand what was happening, but old enough to know it mattered. Virgil sat across the aisle, shackled and pale. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The arrogance that had defined him for so long had cracked, revealing something hollow underneath. Mrs. Whitmore. Judge Harrison's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. Please approach. Clara stood. Her legs trembled, but she walked steadily to the front of the courtroom. You've submitted extensive evidence against Mr. Whitmore. Forged documents, fraudulent notarization, testimony from multiple witnesses regarding his threats and actions against you. Yes, Your Honor. You've also made a serious accusation. Harrison's eyes were sharp. You've alleged that Mr. Whitmore orchestrated the bank robbery that killed your husband. Clara's throat tightened. I have. Do you have proof? I have. Your Honor. A voice from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. A man was pushing through the crowd. Thin, nervous, wearing clothes that had seen better days. Clara didn't recognize him. Who are you? Harrison demanded. My name is Peter Crane. The man's voice shook. I was one of the men who robbed the Austin Bank 3 months ago. The courtroom erupted. Harrison banged his gavel. Order, order. Peter Crane kept talking, his words tumbling out in a rush. Virgil Whitmore hired us, paid us $200 each. He told us exactly when to hit the bank, exactly where William Whitmore would be standing. His eyes found Clara's. He told us to make sure William didn't walk out alive. Clara's knees buckled. Caleb was there instantly, catching her arm. You're lying. Virgil lunged against his chains. This man is a criminal. You can't believe. Mr. Whitmore, sit down. Harrison's voice thundered. He turned to Crane. You're confessing to murder? Yes, sir. Crane's face was gray. I've been running for 3 months. Couldn't live with it anymore. When I heard Whitmore was on trial, I knew I had to come forward. Why should we believe you? Crane reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. Because I kept this. The letter Whitmore sent me. His instructions. In his own handwriting. The courtroom went silent. Harrison took the letter, examined it carefully. His face hardened. Mr. Whitmore. His voice was ice. This appears to match the handwriting on the forged deed transfers. Virgil's face went white. That's not mine. It's a forgery. He's lying. They're all lying. Enough. Harrison stood. Virgil Whitmore, based on the evidence presented, I am adding charges of conspiracy to commit murder and accessory to murder to your existing charges. He looked at Crane. You'll be taken into custody as well. Your cooperation will be noted at sentencing. Your Honor. Virgil's lawyer scrambled to his feet. Sit down, counselor. This case is no longer about property fraud. Harrison's gavel came down with finality. This is now a murder trial, and I'm remanding the defendant to federal custody without bail until proceedings can be scheduled. Clara watched as deputies hauled Virgil away. He didn't curse this time, didn't threaten. He just looked at her with eyes full of hate and something that might have been fear. Then he was gone. Clara's legs gave out. Caleb caught her before she hit the floor. Easy. His arms were strong around her. I've got you. He killed William. Her voice broke. He actually killed him. I know. I suspected, but I couldn't prove. You don't have to anymore. Caleb held her tighter. It's over, Clara. It's finally over. She buried her face in his chest and sobbed. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Lily had fallen asleep in Clara's lap, exhausted by the long day. Jessie dozed against Caleb's shoulder. Ruth drove the wagon, humming softly to herself. Clara watched the familiar landscape roll by, trying to process everything that had happened. Virgil was going to prison, maybe for the rest of his life. Her husband's murder would finally be acknowledged. And her inheritance. William's ranch, everything he'd worked for, was hers again. But none of it felt real. You're thinking too hard. Caleb's voice was soft, careful not to wake the children. How can you tell? Your forehead does this thing. He gestured vaguely, like you're trying to solve a puzzle that won't fit together. Despite everything, Clara smiled. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something else to go wrong. Maybe nothing will. That would be a first. Caleb was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do now? The question caught Clara off guard. What do you mean? You've got your ranch back. Your husband's estate. Everything Virgil tried to steal. He kept his eyes on the horizon. You could go home. Start over. Clara's chest tightened. She hadn't thought about it. Not really. She'd been so focused on surviving, on fighting, on protecting Lily. The idea of going back to her old life hadn't even crossed her mind. I don't know, she said honestly. I haven't thought that far ahead. Caleb nodded slowly. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment maybe, or resignation, but it was gone before she could name it. Take your time. His voice was careful. No rush. But there was something underneath the words, something that sounded almost like goodbye. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting. The burned barn still stood as a skeleton against the sky, but someone Ruth's neighbors probably had cleared away the worst of the debris. The house looked almost normal except for the bullet holes in the porch railing. Home sweet home. Ruth pulled the wagon to a stop. Such as it is. Clara climbed down carefully, Lily still sleeping in her arms. Jessie stirred awake and scrambled after Caleb, immediately launching into questions about dinner. Ruth caught Clara's arm before she could follow. A word. Clara turned, surprised by the urgency in the older woman's voice. What is it? Ruth's eyes were sharp, missing nothing. That man in there loves you. You know that, right? Clara's breath caught. Ruth. Don't Ruth me. I've been watching you two dance around each other for weeks. It's exhausting. Ruth's grip tightened. He's not going to ask you to stay. Too proud, too scared of pushing you. But if you leave, it'll break him. I'm not. And if you stay, just because you feel obligated, that'll break him too. Ruth's voice softened. So figure out what you actually want, Clara. Not what's practical, not what makes sense. What do you want? She released Clara's arm and walked toward the house without waiting for an answer. Clara stood in the yard, Lily's warm weight in her arms, and tried to find the answer within herself. What did she want? She wanted safety. She wanted a home. She wanted Lily to grow up without fear, surrounded by people who loved her. But there was something else too. Something she'd been afraid to name. She wanted Caleb. Not because he'd saved her. Not because she owed him. But because somewhere between the shooting lessons and the midnight conversations, between the terror and the tenderness, she'd fallen in love with him. It had happened so gradually, she hadn't even noticed. But now, standing in his yard facing the possibility of leaving, she felt it with absolute certainty. She loved him, and she didn't want to go. Clara put Lily to bed, then went looking for Caleb. She found him behind the house, standing where the barn used to be. He was staring at the charred foundation, hands in his pockets, shoulders heavy. "Jesse's asking for dinner." Clara's voice made him turn. "Ruth's threatening to cook, which apparently is cause for concern." Ruth's cooking could kill a man. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'll be in soon." Clara moved closer. "What are you thinking about?" "Nothing much." "Liar." He huffed a quiet laugh. "Yeah, I suppose." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the last light fade from the sky. "I've been thinking about what you asked," Clara said finally. "About what I'm going to do now." Caleb went very still. "And I don't want to go back." The words came out stronger than she expected. "I don't want to rebuild William's ranch, or live in William's house, or pretend that life still fits me. Because it doesn't." "Where do you want to go?" Clara took a breath. "Nowhere." She turned to face him. "I want to stay here. With you." Caleb's expression flickered. Hope, doubt, fear, all of it passing across his weathered face in rapid succession. "Clara, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to." She stepped closer. "I want to. There's a difference. This ranch is barely standing. The barn's gone. The fences need work. It's home." Clara took his hands. "It's the first place that's felt like home since William died. And it's not because of the house or the land. It's because of you." Caleb's hands trembled in hers. "I don't know how to do this." His voice was rough. "I don't know how to be what you need." "Neither do I." Clara smiled through the tears building in her eyes. "But Ruth told me to figure out what I want. And what I want is to learn together." She rose on her toes and kissed him. This time it wasn't soft or tentative. It was a declaration, a choice made and sealed. When they broke apart, Caleb's eyes were wet. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For giving me a reason to feel again." They stood there until full dark fell, holding each other in the ruins of what had been and the promise of what could be. The next few months were hard, but hopeful. Clara sold William's ranch to a young couple just starting out. She used the money to rebuild the barn, repair the fences, and buy new stock. Ruth helped negotiate the sale, ensuring Clara got a fair price. Lily bloomed like one of the wildflowers that dotted the pasture. She talked, now, really talked in full sentences with opinions and questions and demands. She followed Jesse everywhere, learning to fish, to ride, to whistle through a blade of grass. One afternoon, Clara found them sitting on the porch, arguing about the best name for the new calf. "Buttercup," Lily insisted. "That's a girl's name. He's a boy. So boys can be called Buttercup." "Cannot." "Can too." Clara laughed, and both children turned to look at her, momentarily united in their outrage at being interrupted. "How about Biscuit?" she suggested. "Works for both." Jesse considered this. "Biscuit's okay, I guess." Lily nodded solemnly. Biscuit. They went back to their bickering about something else, and Clara went inside still smiling. She found Caleb at the kitchen table frowning at a piece of paper. "What's that?" He looked up. Something complicated moved across his face. "Letter from Austin, the prosecutor." He set it down. "Virgil's trial is scheduled for next month. They want you to testify." Clara's stomach dropped. She'd known this was coming, had been preparing for it in a way, but hearing it made real was different. "I'll go," she said quietly. "I'm coming with you." "Caleb, you don't have to try to stop me." She smiled despite herself. "Fine. But you're buying your own train ticket." "Deal." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Clara testified for 2 days. She told the court everything: the forged documents, the threats, the escape from Austin, the attacks on the ranch. She told them about William, about their marriage, about the moment she'd realized Virgil wasn't just greedy, but murderous. Peter Crane testified too. So did 4 of Virgil's former men who'd agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. The evidence was overwhelming. On the final day, the jury deliberated for less than an hour. "Virgil Whitmore, you have been found guilty of fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and accessory to murder." The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. "You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole." Virgil said nothing. He just sat there staring at the table as deputies led him away. Clara watched him go. She waited to feel something: satisfaction maybe, or vindication. But all she felt was tired. And then Caleb's hand found hers, and she felt something else entirely. Relief. "It's done," she whispered. "It's done." They walked out of the courthouse into the Texas sunshine, and Clara didn't look back. Summer turned to fall. The ranch filled with warmth and laughter, and the kind of chaos that comes from 2 children who'd found each other. Ruth stopped by regularly, always with biscuits and unsolicited advice. The neighbors who'd helped during the standoff became friends, then something closer to family. And Clara and Caleb built something new. It wasn't easy. They were both damaged, both carrying scars that didn't show on the surface. There were nights when Caleb woke sweating from dreams of Red Fork, and Clara held him until the shaking stopped. There were days when Clara couldn't shake the weight of everything she'd lost, and Caleb sat with her in silence, not trying to fix it, just being there. But they kept choosing each other, every day, through the hard parts and the good parts and everything in between. One evening in late October, Caleb took Clara's hand and led her to the pasture fence. The sky was painted in shades of gold and crimson. The children were inside, supposedly doing chores, actually probably making mischief. "I want to ask you something," Caleb said. Clara's heart quickened. "All right." He turned to face her, and she saw something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Vulnerability, yes, but also peace. "I spent 5 years trying to atone for what I did in Red Fork. Thought if I punished myself enough it might balance out." He shook his head slowly. "But that's not how it works, is it? You can't undo the past. You can only build something better in the future." "Caleb, let me finish." He took a breath. "You and Lily, you're my future. You're everything I didn't think I deserved. And I know I'm not much. A broken-down ranch, a checkered past, a heart that doesn't work quite right." "Your heart works fine." "It does now." His voice cracked. "Because of you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. It was simple, a thin gold band, probably his mother's, but Clara's breath caught all the same. "I know you've been married before. I know you've lost more than anyone should have to. And I'm not asking you to forget any of that." Caleb's hand trembled as he held out the ring. "I'm just asking if you'd be willing to build a new life. With me." Tears streamed down Clara's face. She didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded. Caleb's whole face transformed. The haunted look that had lived in his eyes since she'd met him dissolved, replaced by something bright and hopeful and young. He slipped the ring onto her finger. "I love you," he said. I should have told you a long time ago, but I was scared. I ain't scared anymore. Clara laughed through her tears. I love you too. Even though you still can't cook to save your life. That's what you're for. She hit his shoulder. He caught her hand and pulled her close. They kissed as the sun set behind them, painting the world in colors neither of them had ever expected to see again. The wedding was small. Ruth insisted on cooking despite everyone's protests. Jesse appointed himself ring-bearer, a responsibility he took with such gravity that Lily had to hold his hand to keep him from crying. The neighbors came bringing food and gifts and well-wishes. Even the federal marshal made an appearance, tipping his hat to Clara with something like respect. Clara wore a simple white dress. Caleb wore his best shirt, the one without patches. They stood on the porch, the same porch where Clara had first arrived, exhausted and terrified, and running for her life, and exchanged vows. I, Clara, take you, Caleb, to be my husband, to love and honor in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live. I, Caleb, take you, Clara, to be my wife, to protect and cherish in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live. When the minister pronounced them married, Jesse cheered so loud he startled the chickens. Lily tugged on Clara's dress. Does this mean I can call him Papa now? Clara looked at Caleb, who looked like he might cry. If you want to, Clara said. Lily turned to Caleb, studying him with those serious blue eyes. Papa, she said, testing the word. Caleb knelt down to her level. I'd be honored. Lily threw her arms around his neck. Okay, you're Papa now. And just like that, they were a family. That night, after the guests had gone and the children were asleep, Clara and Caleb sat on the porch. The stars were bright overhead. The air was cool with the promise of winter. And for the first time in longer than Clara could remember, she felt completely at peace. Happy? Caleb asked. Yes. She leaned against him, feeling his arm come around her shoulders. Are you? He was quiet for a moment. I spent a long time believing I didn't deserve to be happy, that what I did in Red Fork disqualified me from anything good. He pressed a kiss to her hair. I don't believe that anymore. What changed? You. He pulled her closer. You showed me that redemption isn't about punishing yourself. It's about getting up every day and trying to do better, to be better. Clara smiled. That's very wise. Ruth told me that. I'm just repeating it. She laughed, and the sound carried across the quiet ranch, a sound of joy, of healing, of hope. They sat there until the stars wheeled overhead and the first hints of dawn touched the eastern sky. And when the sun finally rose on their first day as a married couple, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she had found what she'd been searching for since the moment William died. Not just safety, not just justice. Home. A place where her daughter could grow up without fear. A man who loved her, not despite her scars but because of them. A family built not from blood, but from choice. She had come to this ranch a widow on the run, desperate, terrified, and alone. Now she was Clara Stone, wife, mother, survivor. And she was finally completely home.